Baltimore Dave here. I'll say that again, Baltimore Dave. My daughter said say it 3 times so you remember it. This is Baltimore Dave. You've probably heard my voice on some early morning calls, talk radio, voiceovers and that type of stuff. But nonetheless, yes, folks, I am a coffee drinker, and today's video is to show you how to roast coffee on a budget. Normally, if you go to Starbucks and buy some dark roasted coffee, it's going to cost you, what, 12 bucks a pound, okay? That's just the beans, and you grind it yourself. I prefer to grind it myself because I do. Anyway, here's dark roasted coffee, and you can tell that, yes, he is a dyed-in-the-wool coffee drinker because of that scummy looking cup in there. But anyway, well-seasoned cup. No, Seattle's best is not the best. Mine is the best for me. Here is how to do it cheaply. Number one, you buy your coffee green. This is actually from Coffee Bean Direct, the coffee roasters, unroasted green. It's called Green French Italian Espresso Blend. This is what it looks like before you roast it. This is actually green coffee beans. There you go. Little sun on it. Yeah, they are green, scudgy looking green and stuff, but this is after they dry them and everything else. And that's the actual heart of the coffee berry, as they call it. They take off the husk and everything else. And they dry it. Second item is the ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill Presto Pop Light Gourmet Hot Air Popper, okay? This guy right here has inside, if we can see that, has a little bitty grill down in there in a conical type shape that supposedly keeps the popcorn kernels rolling around in there until they finally burst and pop. Okay, this guy here, I'm sorry, this is a chimney needed so that it doesn't do exactly what the popcorn popper is designed to do with popcorn, which means it actually has a chute on it, a high temperature plastic chute, and you put your bowl there and it pops the popcorn out. So this, you don't want to do that with coffee beans, okay? And again, this, normally if you buy it from Starbucks already roasted, per pound, 12 bucks. Here is a 5-pound bag, and this 5-pound bag with shipping and handling cost you, round figures, 6 bucks per pound. So that's like, you know, half the price of Starbucks. And you can roast it to your flavor, to your particular taste. I like very dark roasted coffee. This is dark roasted coffee, the product of what we did this morning. Notice the nice glossy sheen on there. That glossy sheen is actually oil, and we've cooked most of the moisture out of this. I say most of it. It's got to cure yet for about 24 hours before it's finally distributes its flavor among the meat of the bean itself, and it gets rid of some of the smoky flavor. As you can see, some of these guys are dark, almost black, and the rest of them are really dark brown. That is what you call dark roasted coffee, and this is more or less a mixture because, hey, some of those beans will roast at different rates. Anyway, when you're roasting coffee, it goes through 2 stages. First stage is the first crack. That first crack is when the coffee bean actually pops open. Now you saw how small the coffee bean was in a green state, and my daughter will jump in there and grab one of those. Now you notice the difference. Much like the popcorn does, that first crack actually expands the coffee bean and the moisture in it, especially the meat of the coffee bean, till it's from this size here to about this size here. Now, the second crack is the basic signal that you're going to use when you want to say this coffee is completely roasted. Now, what you'll do is listen for the second crack, which actually isn't a crack. It's not a pop like the first one. It is actually a sizzle, and we'll demonstrate those here in a couple minutes. Oops, wanted to show you that. This is actually coffee right after the second crack, only a few seconds after the second crack. This is called basically a cinnamon roast coffee. This is what your A&P coffees and your Maxwell House and Folgers and, you know, all those Fruit of the Loom coffees and stuff like that. This is the basic stuff here. It's got plenty of acid to it, depending on the beans. Arabica beans, face it folks, Arabica basically means acid. So you want a little bit of Arabica beans in there for flavor, and you want a bunch of other different ones. That's why bunch of other different beans, and that's why I look at this one here for an espresso roast. It's made to be roasted dark, but if you don't want to roast it dark, you can roast it like such and get a little more acidity and a little more caffeine to it. Key to dark roasted coffee is you'll find that it's got somewhat less caffeine to it and a bunch less acid to it, so you can drink that stuff all day, full flavored, and enjoy it, and it's not going to affect your stomach anywhere near as much as Folgers or Maxwell. I think I described the coffee bean popper here and the chimney, and we have it all sitting on outside here, as you've noticed. Not because it's a nice sunny day, but because my wife will not let me do this inside, and you'll see why in a couple of seconds. One of the big reasons is because smoke. It puts out a lot of smoke. It puts out a lot of odor. Because what you're actually doing with these coffee beans is frying them. I've tried them in the oven, tried them in rotisseries and everything else inside the house, and what you get is a house full of smoke and smoke detectors going off and your wife screaming and everything else, and it's just not a real good sight, so I won't go into that. Anyway, what we'll do is we'll take this guy here, a small handful. Here you have a relatively small hand, okay? Just a palm full of coffee in there. We'll do about 2 of those into this. Right now it's cold, a cold coffee popper. A cold popcorn popper or roaster. I hear from my mouth, I'll let you know. Turn it on. And now what we'll do is you can actually watch this guy here while I drink the coffee. First thing you're going to see is a lot of shells coming out. This is going to be flaky little paper thin chaff shells coming off the coffee beans while it's heating up. Now once you start this up, it's going to take some time. It takes a minute or two for the coffee popper, here we go again, the coffee roaster, your popcorn popper, to heat up. Here comes the chaff to heat up, and I forget how many degrees it is, irrelevant, I don't know, somewhere past 400 degrees. And we may see the chaff coming out there depending on the video or the quality of it. Nonetheless, first thing happens is the chaff comes out. Somewhere between, depending on how well the popper is heated up, between 30 and 60 seconds, maybe a minute and a half, you will start to hear the coffee will actually start to roast. You'll come close to first pop. First pop, first crack. It actually sounds like a pop, that's why I call it a pop. That first crack is the coffee itself expanding to that size. That was the first crack. Maybe you heard it. Listen for the first crack, get a little closer. Try and ignore the sound of the motor itself, the blower. And we'll listen for that first crack. That's the first signal. There's the first crack. We'll hear a few more beans. And actually, it sounds sort of like popcorn popping. That's the first crack. That's your first signal. That says that it's actually heating up. It's now starting to roast. And what you'll actually be listening for is that second crack. And the second crack itself sounds more like a sizzle than a crack, when in fact it is actually a sizzle. And it is the coffee actually heating up to the point where the oil inside the coffee is actually frying out, boiling out the water, the leftover moisture from the initial crack. Start to listen a little closer. In addition to that, there we go, here's your second crack. Sounds like a crackle or a sizzle. What we're actually hearing is the coffee itself starting to fry. And frying means, hey, the oil is actually cooking the moisture out. We'll just turn it off right about now. Instead of going, let's say, the extra 20 seconds or so, notice the smoke. You'll go an extra 20 or 30 seconds past that second crack to actually make dark roasted coffee. This should be cinnamon roasted coffee, or it's kind of dark. What you see is the smoke coming off of there, which is actually some of the shell actually burning off in the frying process. You'll see a very, very high gloss coming off, and that's actually oil. If we look very closely, and my daughter holds the camera very still, we can actually see the coffee beans bubbling. That's the excess moisture coming out, and the gas is coming out from the coffee bean frying inside. And again, this is cinnamon roast, and that only took, let's say, 5 or 10 seconds past the first crack or that sizzle that you heard. This is dark roast, which is actually about 30 seconds. Say that again, 30 seconds. 30 seconds past that second crack, or actually is going to produce a lot of smoke and everything else. One good way to test your coffee to make sure it's not too burnt and that it is done well enough is to do exactly that. My daughter just did it. You saw a hand jump in there. Grab a coffee bean, stick it in your pie hole, and chew it up. Don't swallow it yet. Just chew it up. Mix it with some of the saliva in your mouth. You're actually making coffee. This will give you an idea of what it's going to taste like, almost what it's going to taste like when you make a cup of coffee, a really, really strong cup of coffee out of it. Good. Anyway, Baltimore Dave in Glen Burnie, Maryland. How to roast coffee at, let's say, $6 a pound.